Hello and welcome back to the Faithful Voices of Women. My name is Teresa Santos. I am with Crown Outreach Ministries in Fajardo, Puerto Rico, and I am here with the podcast on women's testimonies. And that's why it says the Faithful Voices of Women. So I wanted to go ahead and just start with my own testimony. And normally I have a guest, but today I decided this is a time for me to actually start my own testimony and start sharing what God has done in my life. So today I wanted to share a little bit about provision. And so I'm going to tell you a little story, a true story about how God has provided in a mighty way for me. And so, and how I learned that trusting in Him was what I needed to do in order for Him to show Himself up, right? So I was married back in 2006, and again, this was a second marriage for myself. I was married in 2006, and I was married to a Christian man. I met him at the post office, and one thing led to another, and we ended up getting married. And then everything was great, right? He was making great money. I was making great money. And we bought a house, we bought the cars, we were living life. And all of a sudden, we decided that we wanted to start a business. So asked him, I go, look, if I'm gonna start this business, I'm gonna have to quit my job, quit my full-time job. So, with your income, you're going to have to cover the expenses, and I'll just start this business and we'll start working on this business and I'll work it full time. And he agreed. He agreed. And so I quit my job, working as a dental office manager. And I did that for quite some time. I was managing dental practices. And so I quit that job and I started trying to make this business work. But meanwhile, through this process, we got hit with, I guess he started doing his taxes with someone, and they were just, I don't know what they were doing with taxes, but anyway, he ended up getting audited. And when they audited him, he didn't have all the receipts, and so obviously now he had to pay the IRS $10,000, approximately $10,000 back. And he didn't make any arrangements to pay that money. So at one point, somehow his wages started getting garnished because he did have a government job and he owed the government. So they started garnishing his wages. And between child support that he had for his prior marriage and the garnishment of the wages, his check went from like $2,200 every 2 weeks to $500 every 2 weeks. So needless to say, we fell behind on our mortgage. We fell behind on our bills. Of course, I was trying to find a job at that point because I'm like, okay, well, I have to stop the business and get a job. And I kept applying and applying and sending my resume. And I had never had any issues finding work, ever, ever. And when I say never, never. And I was a single mom. I raised 4 kids by myself, and it was always, I got this, right? I was a hustler. I would find work, and I would make sure that my kids were taken care of. And when I look back at that situation, I knew that it was God testing my faith, right? Because I was thinking that I was doing everything in my own power, right? I was doing everything in my own power. I thought it was me, 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 I, that I was the one that was providing, that I was the one doing, putting a roof over their head, that I was the one that was feeding them. And so because of that, I was thinking that everything that I did was because of me, right? That I was the one that was providing. Needless to say, that was not the truth. That God was providing. I just didn't see it at the time. Now, when I married this man, I was a fresh Christian, right? I had just received the Lord, the Holy Spirit, and I was still a baby Christian. I didn't know any better. I didn't know what tithing was. I didn't know what a financial seed was. I didn't know any of that, right? So when and I was applying for work and I just wasn't finding work. So again, we went into foreclosure, we lost the cars, everything got repossessed. And here we are, not being able to afford pretty much, our style of living at that point. And so then I would see him tithing. right? And for those of you who don't know what tithing is when you give the first fruits of your income to the church so that they can reach other souls. So basically, you're giving back to God, which is the church, and now the church is going out and reaching out, to save other souls. So that is what tithing is. It's really just giving back to God. And so he kept doing that even when he was only making $500 every 2 weeks. He was tithing $200 because he was tithing on his gross, not his net. So I couldn't understand that because I'm getting upset and I'm like, how can you do that? You know, we're struggling here. I don't think God would want us to be in this situation, and we have responsibilities and we have to pay the bills. And how can you just give, the money to the church when we're struggling? And so I just wasn't understanding. He was believing God that God was going to provide. So he was still tithing, and I was not believing because I didn't understand. I didn't know any better, right? So when that happened, obviously the it went on where we were already in foreclosure, everything had been repossessed, like I said, and I was just getting, it was argument after argument because I couldn't understand that, out of the $500 that he was bringing home, he was giving $200 away, and we had $300 basically to get us through 2 weeks of time, right, until his next paycheck. So I was just, it was just argument after argument. And at some point he gave up and he left the house. And eventually we ended up in divorce. But he left the house because he was under a lot of stress, and I was, obviously I wasn't helping because I was just, nagging, nagging, nagging. How can you do this? How can you do this to us? And it was all about us and me, and so I wasn't understanding, right? So, and I know now that God was just testing my faith because I didn't understand that at the time. And so here I am. He had already left the house. Here I am in this house, and I'm asking Lord, okay, well, like we used to serve in church. We stopped going to church because obviously of all the problems, we stopped going to church. We used to serve at the church, both of us. And I just couldn't understand what was happening. I couldn't understand. So here I am in this house. I'm not going to church. He's already gone. I'm waiting for somebody to come knocking on my door telling me I had to leave the house, right? Because it was already in foreclosure. So I was just waiting for that eviction notice. My light was about to get disconnected. I couldn't pay my cell phone, so my phone was about to get disconnected. And so and I have 4 kids, all grown, never really told them anything that was going on. I never really told anybody what was going on. And now that I look back, back at it and I say that was pride. I was being prideful. I was thinking, I could never tell anybody that I lost my house and that I'm losing my house, that I lost my cars. How can I tell my kids? How can I tell my family? So I look back at it now and I realize that it was pride, right? And so when I look at that, and one day I'm sitting at the house and I'm like, okay, like I'm in, like just in limbo, right? Like just waiting for somebody to come knocking on my door. I was living in fear. I was getting anxiety because anytime they're going to come in here and they're going to, take my house and all this stuff, where am I going to live? And so, the Lord put in my heart, go to church. So mind you, I don't have a car. I had $25 in my bank account. I had already eaten through everything I had, and I had $25 in my bank account. So I go, okay, all right, I'll go to church. So I call my dad and I go, hey dad, can I borrow your car? Right. And my dad lives about six blocks away. So he says, yeah, come and pick it up. So I go, and, he didn't even ask me about, what's wrong with your car, what happened to your car. But I go and I borrow his car and I go to church, and I had $25 in my bank account. And so I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to give $20 because I believe you have never forsaken me. I have never been without a roof over my head. I have never been without food on my table. I've always worked. I know that you're going to provide. You are not going to leave me or forsake me. I know that you're not. I am believing you, and I'm going to give this $20. And the only reason I'm giving $20, Lord, is because I need $5 to put gas in the car to take it back to my dad. but I'm going to give $20. And the last $20 I had, and I gave it with all the faith in the world. All the faith in the world. Here's $20, my offering to you, Lord, because I know that you are not going to fail me and you are not going to forsake me. And I know I demanded him. I was like, Lord, you're going to provide, okay? But I said it with belief, with faith, with trusting that he was not going to forsake me and he was not going to leave me in that situation. So I gave the $20 and I had total peace about it. And I took the $5, I put the $5 in gas. I drove the car back to my dad's house. He gave me a ride back to the house. I went and sat in the house with peace. No anxiety, no nothing. When I tell you I had peace, I had total peace. And I didn't have a dollar in my bank account. Okay? Not a dollar to my name. And this was Sunday. On Monday morning, I get a call. And it was from a brother at the church that I used to serve with. And he says, Teresa, and mind you, they didn't know anything about what was going on. They didn't know about our financial situation. They didn't even know that I was separated already from my husband. They didn't know anything. He goes, Teresa, the Lord put in our hearts to sow a financial seed in your life. And I'm thinking to myself, financial seed, what's that? Right? Because again, I was a baby Christian. I didn't know. And I'm like, okay, I don't understand. And he's like, God has put in our hearts to deposit some money in your bank account. Is it okay if you give me your bank account information so that I can make a deposit? I can't do it today, but I will do it first thing tomorrow morning. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, first I'm in shock, but then I'm like, okay, Lord, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then, I'm expecting, and I said to him, oh, I'll pay you back. I'll pay you back. I'll pay you back as soon as I can. He says, no, 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 Teresa, you cannot pay us back because if you pay us back, you'll be taking away from our blessing. The Lord has asked us to do this for you, and we are obeying him. And so if you pay us back, you're going to be taking away from the blessing that he has for us. So no, you are not going to pay us back. And I said, okay, okay, that's fine. Thank you so much. And I hang up the phone and I'm total peace. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe $100, $80, $100 they're going to put in my bank account, which at that point I was like fine with because at least I could pay my cell phone if nothing else, or pay, the light bill or partial the light bill. So I'm like, okay, that's great. Thank you so much. And I gave him the bank account information and I just went about my day. And so on Tuesday morning, I look at my bank account and there's a deposit for $500. Mind you, I had $0. $0. Now I have $500 in my bank account. I will remember sitting at my desk looking at the computer and I looked at the computer and I looked at the deposit and all I can do was fall to my knees. I literally got off my chair and fell to my knees in front of my desk. And I was praising God. I was thanking him, and I'm still getting emotional about it. And this has been more than 20 years ago. Um, I couldn't believe that that had just happened. And I was like, Lord, like, thank you, Father. Thank you, Father. And I was just sitting down. I was literally on my knees, just praising him and thanking him. And I was in awe, right? I was in awe and I was so excited and so grateful and I just wanted to share it. I wanted to share it with someone. So I called my best friend and I go, oh my God, Alex, you don't understand what just happened to me. And I'm going on and on and on. And he says, Teresa, how come you never told me that that's what you were going through? I know that if I was in that same situation, you would have done the same thing for me. You would have helped me. So why would you not even come to me? And I said, oh, you know how we are, Alex, you know how we are, I just, and now I look back and I know and I understand that that was pride. I was being prideful. I didn't want to share with anybody that I was losing my house, that I had lost my cars. I didn't want to ask for help because I had pride. I was prideful. And I didn't want to have to share that with anybody because I thought I'm gonna get us out of this. I'm gonna fix this because I always have, I'm gonna take care of this. I'm gonna figure it out. It was always about I. I wasn't providing anything. I know that. God was always providing. God was always providing, yet I always thought it was me providing, me doing everything. But no, God gives us everything that we have. And I didn't realize that until that moment. So when he did that, when I got that deposit and I got to my knees and I told Alex and he's Alex is like, okay, well, I'm actually making some rice. Can you know if you have any meat, cook up some meat and I'll take the rice. And at that point, I didn't even have any groceries in my refrigerator. So like literally, I think I had eaten my last egg or oatmeal, I think, or something that I had. That was the last I had, and so I figured, okay, I'll do some groceries with the $500. Like I have enough to do a little bit of groceries and get me by until I find a job. So the $500 were in my bank account. So Alex comes over, and meanwhile, in that transition, my son calls me after I spoke to Alex. My son calls me out of nowhere, and he says, "Hey, mom, I was going to Aldi. That's like a grocery store. I'm going to Aldi. Do you need anything?" And I said, "Yeah, baby, if you can just bring me like a dozen eggs and a loaf of bread, that would be amazing because I can live on eggs and bread." And so he says, "Sure, mom, no problem. I'll bring you some eggs and some bread." I'm like, "Perfect. Thank you so much." So I hang up with him and I'm waiting for Alex to get there. And my son comes, right? With the what I thought was just bread and eggs because that's all I asked him for. And he said, "Mom, when I was at the grocery store, something told me that you needed more." He got there with 6 bags of groceries. 6 bags of groceries. I asked him for bread and eggs, and he comes with 6 bags of groceries. So when he came with those 6 bags of groceries, I'm like, "Eli, but what's all this? I only asked you for this." He says, "No, mom, something told me that you needed more." Who do you think that somebody was? God was telling him I needed more and was using my son to provide for my groceries. So then at that point, my friend Alex comes, right? And at that point, I obviously had some food. I had some, chicken breast that my son had brought. And so I made some chicken breast. We had dinner. I explained everything, and before he left, he takes out a check out of his shirt pocket. I remember it like it was yesterday. He takes out a check out of his shirt pocket and he says, "Here, it's not much, but I know." And he goes, "And don't even think about paying me back." He goes, "It's not much, but it's what I can do right now, and I hope it helps." And he gave me a $300 check or a check for $300. So now I had $800 in the bank. So I'm praising. What do you think I did when he left? I got back on my knees. That's right. I spent a lot of time on my knees that week. And I got back on my knees and I said, "Oh my God, Lord, thank you so much, Father. You're so good. You're so good." And so I'm praising the Lord, right, for provision, for providing. And I said, "Okay, and now I can pay the light, I can pay my phone, I have groceries, and this will get me at least until I find a job." And this was Tuesday. This all happened on Tuesday. Wednesday morning, I get a phone call. Now, mind you, I had been applying for jobs for 6 months and not one phone call, not one interview, nothing. And I've never had a problem finding a job, especially in my field. I could leave one job and find a job, 10 jobs, 10 offers, immediately. Not one, not one. I kept applying, 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 and not one. So I know that God was testing my faith. And so on Wednesday, I get a call and it's from someone for a job interview from a place that I had applied for almost 6 months prior. And he tells me, "Teresa, I've had your resume here on my desk for about 6 months. And for one reason or another, I don't know why I haven't called you yet because you're really qualified for this job. But anyway, I saw it back on my desk and I'd love for you to come in for an interview. Can you come in today?" I go, "Absolutely, I can come in today." So I took a little bit of money out. I went to the bus. I took the bus because I didn't have a car. I took the bus to downtown and I interviewed for the job and I got the job making $25 an hour. So when I tell you that God provides, he provides. This was in a span of 3 days after I gave those $20 in faith, knowing that God was going to provide. Now, when I look back and I say, Lord, but that's not even the only thing you did. Like he just reminded me that obviously my credit was shot, right? Because I had foreclosure, a pre-foreclosure on the house already. I was in, they had repossessed my car, so my credit was shot. I had a $46,000 debt from a timeshare that I couldn't pay, and they were, coming after me with collections, and it was just showing up on my credit as another $46,000 debt. And I'm like, oh Lord, how am I going to get out of this? Like there's just so much. And the foreclosure, and I'm going to owe money after this foreclosure, because they were saying that whatever you foreclosed on, if you owe 200 and they sold it for 50, you're responsible for the balance, and you had to pay the balance. There was just so much going on back in that time with the market. And I'm like, how am I going to do this, Lord? Like, how am I going to find this money to pay everything back? Like, I can't do this, right? And my credit is shot. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to qualify for an apartment, because everybody checks credit now. So I'm praying all this, and I'm like, okay, Lord, I'm gonna work for these next two paychecks so I can get an apartment, so I can be able to move out, and because I don't want to be here when they come to evict me. So I need an apartment. So I've saved up for a month from my paychecks, and I was able to apply for an apartment. And I was praying, I'm like, Lord, please don't let them check my credit, because my credit is really bad right now. And they didn't even check my credit. They said, no, we're good. You have a job, everything's good, no problem. You can move in, right? This was in June. So in July 1st, I was able to move in. And so I was able to leave the house. But not only did he do that, that $46,000 debt disappeared out of my credit report. The collection call stopped. The debt disappeared off my credit report, $46,000. When I foreclosed on the house, that balance was forgiven. The balance they sold, we paid $250,000 for our condo, and it sold for $39,000 when the market crashed in auction. And that difference that I was supposed to be responsible for was forgiven. So when I tell you that God provides and that he can do mighty things, is because I'm living testimony of what he's done. And he's provided over and over and over again, over and over. And situations where, again, I've been with $5 in my bank account, and all of a sudden I get a check in the mail. All of a sudden there's a direct deposit from a prior job I did that I've completely forgot about. Like, he provides. He provides. So I'm encouraging you today to know that the Lord provides. That if you're going through lack right now, if you're going through a time period right now where you are struggling, where you don't know where the next paycheck is coming from, when where you have debt, where there's everything amounting on your side, and you're like, how am I going to get this? How am I going to get through this? I'm telling you, give. Give in the little, because he will provide in the big. He will provide big when you give in the little, when you trust him. Remember, I had $25 in my bank account, and I gave $20 to him. I offered, and I put an offering in, believing and trusting that he was going to provide and that he wasn't going to forsake me. And I gave it with all the faith in the world, and he gave me total peace. And then he provided. And he's been providing ever since. So if you're having that situation, please share this with someone else too. Share this with someone else, because you don't know what people are going through. You don't know what people are going through. And I know that this message is going to be received by the person who needs to hear it. And if that is you, give in the little. Remember that God always provides and have faith. Have faith that He is going to come through. Pray and He will come through and give in the little. You know, I literally had my last $20 and I gave it to him. I gave it to him, trusting him that he was not going to leave me or forsake me. And he came through. And he's done it over and over and over again. So believe that he's never going to leave you or forsake you, because that's what his word says, that he's not going to leave you or forsake you. We just have to trust him because it's not in our own power. It can't be about, I got this, I got this, I do it, I do it. That's what I was doing. It was all about me. It was about how I was, this powerhouse woman that was able to do everything. No, I wasn't. I had to come to a realization that everything I have comes from God. And as easily as He gives it, He can take it away. And if He sees that you are not trusting in Him, He can just as easily take it away until He sees that you have been humbled. Because I was humbled. Big time, I was humbled. And so I praise Him every day, every single day for His provision. Even if I have $5 in my bank account, I thank Him for those $5 because I know that He's not going to leave me or forsake me, and He's going to continue to provide. So I hope that this word encourages you, that you share it with your nieces, with your sisters, with your mother, with your daughters, with your best friends, anyone that you feel. Or even if you don't feel it, just share it because you don't know if this is the word that somebody needed to hear today. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And I will see you on our next Faithful Voices of Women podcast. And don't forget to share, like, and save this video for the future. In case you ever run into that situation, you can come back and remember how God just comes through and He provides. God bless you.